Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 independent comic books, and today we're talking about how it's all about money at Warner Brothers Discovery. That's what David Zaslav is up to. We're going to get into an article from The Verge. HBO Max and Warner Brothers Discovery seem to be on fire, and that's on purpose. The plan is to make a lot of money as cheaply as possible. The Verge is owned by Vox, and Vox is far to the left. But they know what they're talking about here. It is about the money. We're also going to talk about, this is directly from Vox, why John Malone's shadow looms over CNN. John Malone's the billionaire who backs David Zaslav, and Zaslav was put in place by Malone at Discovery. Malone knows what he's doing. He's worth $10 billion, used to run the cable industry. We're also going to talk about how much HBO Max is going to lose because it's canceling shows. They're going to lose subscribers. How many? Not that many. We're going to also talk a little bit more about John Malone and his background. Very, very interesting businessman. You get a real strong idea of what the ethos, the beliefs are behind what David Zaslav is all about and what he's doing. Okay, also real quick, we'll talk about Disney losing their special tax status in Florida and how that seems to have affected an expansion plan. They really, really blew themselves up. All right, so let's get into it. Before we do, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up when you like it. All right, so from The Verge, HBO Max and Warner Brothers Discovery seem to be on fire, and that's on purpose. The plan is to make a lot of money as cheaply as possible. Well, that's perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Okay, the last few weeks, Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav has started to feel like a villain in a Real Housewives show. He isn't here to make friends. He is here to make money. Films have been canceled. TV shows have been yanked off HBO Max with zero preamble. Execs have been let go. A lot of them, we've talked about that. Worsening the company's already notable diversity problem. Oh my gosh. And the company has lost $20 billion off its market cap, which we also covered. That's not because of layoffs. That's because of worsening business results that have nothing to do with Zaslav. That was how the companies were set up. The merger just took place a few months ago. It's not like there's operating issues at the companies just yet. And it's all in an effort to get $3 billion in savings and hopefully reorient a ship Zaslav has disagreed with the course of. It's not being done to save $3 billion in costs. There are layoffs and things they're doing to save some money. This is what it's about. Reorient the whole company. When you have a merger, of course you have to combine the companies. Of course there have to be changes. How else would you manage these things? Zaslav's plan is to focus on making as much money as cheaply as possible. Said so well. When he joined Discovery in 2006, it was a small collection of education-oriented cable channels. Zaslav tuned into the reality TV monster we know today. He turned it into it. He's made his money catering to audiences that don't pay for streaming, but instead flip the channel on the TV. And when they don't find something to watch, pack up and head to the movie theater. So while we're seeing what could be the fumblings of an egoist, which we're not, with no grasp on the properties he's purchased, it's not happening. What feels much more likely is that Zaslav just doesn't care about the stuff a lot of us care about. That's it exactly, and neither do I. I'm sorry. Tell me if you care about the things these guys care about. I don't. In the comments below. Such as a, quote, big spread of readily available content that speaks to smaller groups, often underrepresented in popular media, all at a fairly affordable price. Zaslav isn't here to better enrich our entertainment landscape. He's here to make money with quality and with brand loyalty. That means he's got to shift a company that spent 2 years focusing its energies elsewhere. In the years leading up to the Warner Brothers and Discovery merger, Warner Brothers underwent a pretty radical transformation. COVID altered the way people operated in 2020. And Warner Brothers went all in, deciding to focus on streaming at the cost of its other businesses. Well, Warner Brothers decided to do same day and date releases on streaming to push HBO Max subscriptions with theater releases of movies. But a lot of people weren't going to the movies, so it was a very unique situation. And did it work out? I mean, they got sold. So maybe. As a person with a very nice home theater setup and a love of quick and easy to access content, this was very appealing to the author, and I bet it was for everyone else. Instead of risking illness to see the biggest movies in theaters, he's talking about COVID, we could sit at home and watch King Kong body Mothra over Mexico, or Paul Atreides whisper talk his way into the legend in Dune. As people's concerns over COVID waned, HBO Max maintained a steady stream of content designed to compete not with traditional Warner Brothers rivals like Disney and Universal, but with Netflix, whose movies go straight to the streamer and only make pit stops in theaters for awards eligibility. Theater owners already devastated by COVID were furious at the new Warner Brothers plan. They were very mad, but they're happier now that Zaslav has reversed course, widening release windows and even moving some direct-to-streaming films into theaters. Even if a marketing budget crunch means for the next few years you see fewer Warner Brothers films hitting theaters, it's the thought that counts. Because, of course, theater owners are looking at it and saying, hey, if you've got Wonder Woman and I'm dedicated in the theater to showing that movie, and you've got it on streaming at the same time, it's going to be pirated everywhere, and I have to compete with your streaming service. They were not so happy at the movie theaters. They were struggling, of course, too. And Zaslav's appeals to theaters is mutually beneficial. Direct to streaming makes a lot of sense for Netflix. It makes limited sense for Netflix. That you'll see changes in Netflix too, guaranteed. A company with a very small distribution arm. Warner Brothers Discovery has a whole apparatus built up to make lots of money off of films in theaters, internationally. Quote, why, I'm sure Zaslav says to himself, should we throw away all that potential money just to boost the $15 a month subscriptions we sell for HBO Max? Instead, the company can put the movies in theaters and then move them to streaming services and double dip on us, the consumers. Well, the idea is it's just a different outlet. So you're not going to get it on streaming the same time it's in movie theaters. They're going to make as much as they can in movie theaters, and then they're not going to put it onto streaming until they're done with showing it in movie theaters. The other thing it does is you become part of the culture, right? Tell me what you think in the comments. But you become a big, iconic brand by having massive worldwide distribution, and you get that with theaters, right? And then when you got a big, iconic movie, Spider-Man, whatever, Batman, whatever it's going to be, you then attract people to the streaming service to want to see that iconic thing on the streaming service. So the author says here he doesn't want to pay 1 billion times for the same content. I don't think it's going to be 1 billion, but if you enjoy it in a theater, it's a different experience than sitting at home and watching it on Netflix or buying the DVD or whatever the streaming service is. These are different experiences, and you're going to pay for experiences because these movies cost a lot of money to make. We don't know how the shocking cancellation of Batgirl plays into Zaslav's grand plan. It's not a part of a grand plan. It's just the movie wasn't good enough to promote as a new DC theatrical release, and that's what Zaslav wants. He wasn't going to just dump it on the streaming service and let people give it bad ratings and damage all their brands, right? Discovery into much more traditional entertainment behemoth. So they're going to take Zaslav's plans, obviously, to make them a more traditional behemoth, a more traditional entertainment company where, sure, they have streaming direct to consumer, but they're going to sell their stuff any way they can, every way they can, to make as much money as they can. They don't care about being the next Netflix. And when they first did this merger, they announced they were going to do it, Netflix hadn't dropped 80% with their stock value. I mean, they got completely crushed in the beginning of January this year, just January. So they closed their deal in March, and by that time, things have changed. Reports on the film have ranged from, this is Batgirl, it's so bad it should never see the light of day, to it wasn't bad and it had a really great message. It might have been canceled because it looked a little too CW to appear after the Warner Brothers Discovery logo on the big screen, right? Could they really have that? Could they really afford that they're going to release something and it's not going to be good? Of course not. Not now. They just did the merger. Or it might have been canceled to help eke out a few extra tax break dollars as Zaslav and company worked to make that $3 billion in savings promised by the merger. When the author spoke to a lecturer in accounting at Wharton School and author of the newsletter, The Dig, she noted the move to cancel Batgirl for tax reasons was weird. It wasn't weird. Let's see what she says, and I'm going to tell you what it is. All right? Never mind her Wharton School. I'll tell you what the real deal is. Quote, there are tax benefits to writing down the assets now if you're the kind of company who likes losses because they offset current or future tax liability, she said via email. Warner Brothers is a loser to begin with, so not sure why the incremental losses based on trash canning films is that helpful. Well, first of all, they do have taxable earnings. They do make money at the combined company of Warner Brothers Discovery. So, yeah, if they write off that expense, then they'll pay less taxes based on it. I don't know what the heck she's talking about. You take a loss and that's it. The other issue is the movie wasn't done. There was still additional editing to be done, and then it would have had to been promoted and marketed. So they would have had to spend at least $30 to maybe $50 million more, forgetting the issue of the difference between the tax savings, to make the film happen, like so that people could actually see it. Sure, they could just throw it on the streaming service and have it be a total failure, but they still would have had to spend money and not even promote it. Fine, but they still would have had to pay all the finishing costs of the production. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense to finish the movie and put it out. In its second quarter filings, Warner Brothers Discovery didn't reference the cancellation specifically, but did outline its overall plan in very accountant terms. Well, that's what you do in SEC filings. Content impairments for 6 months ended June 30th, 2022 was $496 million and $501 million. This didn't even include the Batgirl loss that's going to be in the next quarter. So they're going to be writing off a lot of stuff they don't need. And that makes business sense for them. All of the above is account speak for Warner Brothers has a lot of content it doesn't think makes sense for the new business and will get rid of it to write it off on the company's taxes. Correct. Batgirl wasn't the only thing to apparently fall victim to the accounting department's very sharp pen. In the past few weeks, the company has quietly removed dozens of shows and films from HBO Max, often without even warning their creators. One showrunner, The Verge spoke to, only learned of their show removal from Twitter. Now, that sounds like something that could have been handled better. I don't know why it wasn't handled better, except if they didn't want to create chaos by starting to tell creators in advance and then having creators do social media campaigns and then have other creators freak out. So, they've terminated plenty of people. They've canceled plenty of projects. They work with people at all levels, of lower level people and higher level people and talent. So they handled this stuff the way they thought was the most efficient way. It doesn't seem to me like it was sloppy. It just seems like they thought it needed to be done like this. Everyone gets told at the same time. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The reason for the culling seems to be that the content wasn't hitting a big enough audience, and much of the content catered to an audience the new Warner Brothers Discovery just has no interest in: kids. Sources told CNBC that Warner Brothers Discovery has decided to move away from the category with its future investment budget. Earlier this week, the Daily Beast reported that much of this culling includes layoffs of the divisions overseeing HBO Max's unscripted, kids and family, and international content, was in part to reorient the service and the company to better pursue Zaslav's real money cow, Middle America. Hey, they spend money? Why not? If David Zaslav had his wish, he would just program Chip and Joanna all day long. From the reality show. And that's what he's going to do to Warner Brothers Discovery. But Zaslav's goal, to craft a company that can make money hand over fist by catering to the largest possible audience with a predictable and cheap slate of content, isn't really what any of the rest of the leftists want. Sorry. This is why you see there will be changes. There'll be changes in every aspect of Warner Media. There will be drastic changes too at DC Comics. And what are they going to produce at DC Comics? Well, they're not going to say, hey, you know something? Let's do this. Let's make that all leftist social justice stuff and make it as woke as we can. They're going to go after the middle America content, which is the content that we're all used to and we've been paying money for years and we expect from a DC Comics. The last few years, we've enjoyed a renaissance of TV. So much TV has been made so quickly, and for so much money, there's now a shortage of qualified showrunners. Those are the guys that put shows together. So much TV has been made, every company scrambles to populate their new streaming service with stuff to watch that a variety of people have rarely, if ever, had the opportunity to see their lives represented on TV, have gotten that opportunity. And that means less diverse content or different kinds of content. It's basically going to just be the kind of content that sells. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, I want to buy what people want to sell me, and if they respect that I want this kind of content, they'll say it. And as far as other diverse content, whatever. People will make it if it's profitable. Or Disney will make it. Remember when Disney lost their special tax status in Florida after the LGBTQ Don't Say Gay bill controversy? The tax status being revoked is such a big deal because it's incalculable how much money that costs Disney for their woke stuff. They're woke, we're going to force this bill to get overturned. We're going to overturn this law, not even the bill. I was saying at the time, this could cost Disney billions on top of billions. It could be $2 billion, it could be $50 billion. It's incalculable because now they can't even make business decisions about expanding their parks. A massive Disney World expansion likely canceled remains abandoned. This is a whole other project that Disney's had to cancel as a result. On HBO Max, how many subscribers are they going to lose? What kind of hits are they going to take for canceling all this animation? Well, they've done the math. Removing the series are going to cost maybe 2.1% of the total demand for HBO Max's catalog. The animation, that's the maximum size. So of the interest in HBO Max's catalog, 2.1% of it were these animated shows. That's why they're cutting those shows. And this is coming from Rap Pro. Okay, and there's more to this article. We're not going to get into it. Just to show you, they've done the math. It's about the money. Stuff's going to get canceled that doesn't make sense for the channel and the business. If it's not making money, they're not going to do it. And just a little bit more on John Malone, because John Malone, you can learn a lot about what the future of Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be by understanding John Malone. This is from the New York Times. Cable cowboy John Malone sees more streaming bundles ahead. The media mogul also said news channels should do a better job of distinguishing between news and opinion. So there's this other Vox article about billionaire John Malone, why his shadow looms over CNN. John Malone saved CNN. So Ted Turner, who started CNN, was way over in his head in debt with his deal with MGM. And he was going to lose control of his networks. And he needed to raise money for CNN. He called John Malone. John Malone said, this is going back to the 1980s. 1980s? Yeah. Or maybe early 90s. I believe it was mid-late 80s. Called Malone and said, hey, I need money or this is going to be he's going to lose the network. So Malone put together a group of investors and funded Ted Turner to save all of Ted Turner's assets, including CNN. That was one thing John Malone did. And when you talk about John Malone and talk about John Malone's interest in CNN and Fox, John Malone was called by Rupert Murdoch, and Rupert Murdoch wanted to start his own news channel and said, hey, I want to start a news channel like CNN. What do you think, John? And John said, well, you're going to give me a chunk of the ownership, and I'll put it on my cable network and help you out. And John Malone not only saved CNN, but suggested that Fox should be a conservative-based channel because CNN was, at the time, centrist and a little bit left. And he said, look, you need to have a different approach so that you're not just doing the same exact thing, but if they're left and you're right, it could work. So Malone wound up with ownership in the Fox News network and made it happen because he had the channel network to do the distribution. So these are very, very straightforward, very serious business people. They know what they're doing. They know what works. And that's what they're going to be doing. All right, this is a kind of a quick article. Early last year, the longtime media heavyweight John Malone made a prediction about a big change coming in the film and TV industry. Over lunch, the two fellow media moguls, Brian Roberts of Comcast and Barry Diller of IAC, at his winter home in Jupiter, Florida, Mr. Malone hypothesized that AT&T, when the owner of media brands like they were the owner of HBO, CNN, and Warner Brothers Film Studio, would soon spill off and sell those properties. It's funny, I was saying the same thing around that time, but I'm not worth $10 billion. A short time later, his prognostication came true. Still, he said, he was surprised when David Zaslav, then the chief executive of the reality TV giant Discovery, called him in March, seeking his approval. as an influential Discovery shareholder to combine with Warner Media. The deal forming Warner Brothers Discovery was announced in May. Now, John Malone was more than influential in Discovery. John Malone had controlling interest in Discovery. And it was John Malone that put David Zaslav in charge of Discovery. He found David Zaslav, his mentor. In an interview last week from his ranch in Colorado, Mr. Malone, at 81 years old, recalled that he gave his approval because David Zaslav would ultimately turn it into a great business. His conjecture about Warner Media was the latest in a series of uncanny hunches over the past century that have, it's a long half century, still a long time, that have helped him earn the nickname Cable Cowboy among his peers in the media industry. Mr. Malone, the former chairman and chief executive of Telecommunications Inc., or TCI, struck a flurry of deals as cable was booming and parlayed his fortune into a media empire spanning TV, film, live music, and motorsports. The company he founded, Liberty Media, has interests in Formula One, Sirius XM, and Live Nation. If you look on Audible for the book Cable Cowboy on John Malone, that's the title of it. Great book. Really, really good book. You learn a lot. Mr. Malone only sporadically grants sit-down interviews with the news media, but he talked for more than an hour on the phone last week, opening up about the streaming wars, the fast-changing news business, and the future of his own career. Mr. Malone said he endorsed the Discovery deal in part because he thinks smaller media companies need to get bigger to compete with the streaming giants like Disney and Netflix. And he said this for years in CNBC interviews too. He predicted further consolidation with minor players either merging or bundling their services. The smaller guys can't get to scale, Malone said. They'll inevitably have to combine in order to try to become profitable. By get to scale, he means they have to do a certain amount of volume. Even just like a concept of a restaurant. You have to have a certain number of customers come in to be able to pay the rent, all the other expenses, to be able to pay your people, buy food profitably, and economically, and be able to run the operation. And a small business has a harder time than a larger business because of that scale of volume. In the months since the Warner Brothers Discovery deal closed, the company's stock price has fallen about 43% during a broader slump in the media industry. Mr. Malone said that decline, especially the tumble in the initial weeks of trading, did not surprise him. Mr. Malone said he warned other board members that many shareholders of AT&T, the previous owner of Warner Media, would sell off the stock. So that's the other reason why the stock went down at Warner Brothers Discovery, because the owner before the merger was AT&T. AT&T, basically to completely obfuscate and cloud how much money was being lost when they sold Warner Media, the way they sold the company was to take the stock ownership in Warner Media and give it all to the shareholders directly. That saved them on taxes, and it made it kind of hard to understand what the hell was going on in the transaction. I've been looking for a great detailed breakdown of the spinoff of Warner Media from AT&T. If anybody listening to this has a great rundown that shows exactly how much money or approximately how much money AT&T lost for that transaction, I'd love to see it, because I really honestly have not come across it. I haven't found it. And by the way, that's a John Malone thing. John Malone structured that deal, guaranteed, because he's very advanced with all the tax strategies and all these brilliant spin-offs and tracking stocks and things. But that's why the stock went down, because the AT&T shareholders were like, wait a minute, no, we didn't want this stock in Warner Media Discovery. Our plan was just to get dividends. They didn't buy the company, but they got stuck with the company for these tax strategies because of the management of AT&T and John Malone's fancy dealing. So they would sell it to get the cash out of it. They were accustomed to receiving a dividend from AT&T and would sell after the wireless giant announced lower dividend payments when the merger closed. And that's the other thing they did. They cut their annual shareholder dividends, basically profit sharing. Quote, I knew the stock was going to take a real beating, Mr. Malone said. I mean, I absolutely knew it. And sure he did. And yep, the stock took a beating. So these guys know what they're doing. Okay, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.